Fun fact about me. The Neverglades isn't the only thing I've written. I actually have quite a few stories available on No Sleep and my personal subreddit. My hope is that this channel will be a way of introducing you to some hidden Pharaohverse gems, stuff that you'll enjoy just as much as the Neverglades. A couple of years ago, I released a series called The Cruelest Months, a group of horror stories linked by one key theme, the months and seasons in which they're set. Think New Year's, Valentine's Day, etc. You might also notice some ties to the Neverglades here and there. If you spot any connections between the stories, I'd love to get your observations in the comment section below. This story is set just before Valentine's Day, and it follows a young man named Jonathan Masters, who's feeling woefully single. There are worse things than being alone for the holiday, though, as Jonathan is about to find out. I guess I'll preface this with a quick disclaimer. I hate Valentine's Day. I'm not sure whose bright idea it was to remind bachelors like me how painfully single we are by shoving hearts and flowers and cutesy-kissing couples in our faces. We've officially turned love into a commodity, something you can buy in boxes of chocolate and expensive jewelry, and it's sickening. I know I'm hardly the first person to complain about how fucking commercial it is. It just pisses me off is all. Am I bitter? Maybe just a little. Truth is, I used to love the holiday, at least back when I had a steady boyfriend to spend my money on. Everything seems so much rosier when you got a warm body to cuddle up with on cold nights, someone to spoil with little love trinkets and stolen kisses. It's only when you don't have that anymore that you realize how shallow it all is. I won't name that particular ex in case he happens to be reading this. We parted on relatively good terms, and I'd rather not drag his name through the mud. Our breakup kinda soured me on romance in general, though. Besides, I was going through a big life transition, moving all the way to the East Coast to start my post-college career, and it was probably for the best that I didn't have a relationship to sidetrack me. The problem is this: being single sucks. As much as I disparage the commercial trappings of romance, it does get lonely when you come home from a long day at the office and there's no one there to greet you when you come in. Plus the obvious lack of physical comforts. There's no shortage of Boston locals looking for easy hookups, and I'll admit I've gone that route myself on more than one occasion. Empty sex is just that, though. Empty. So lately my relationship with relationships has been complicated, to say the least. Especially now that Valentine's Day is looming and I just know the office is going to be decked out in paper hearts and blinding shades of pink before the week is up. Sandra, who has the cubicle next to mine, is already wearing heart-shaped earrings and listening to sappy love songs while she works. $10 she's got a boyfriend to keep her warm when she gets home. Not that I'm jealous or anything. Anyway, the point is, I was already feeling kinda shitty about my love life when I got the email. The office was emptying out and I was wrapping up a last-minute spreadsheet when my inbox pinged. Sure, it was just my project coordinator or something. I clicked over to my email to skim the message. It wasn't my coordinator. In fact, it was from an address I didn't recognize at all. A string of gibberish letters at a domain called ng.net. I would have deleted it as spam, but something about the subject line made me pause.
Subject: Jonathan, I miss what we used to have.
I knew spam bots could fill in your name to any number of phishing templates, but there was something weirdly personal about this one, and I found my finger hesitating over the mouse. I would be in deep shit if this email flooded my work computer with viruses. But I couldn't shake the notion that my ex had sent the message, as stupid as that sounds. I didn't want to delete the thing without at least taking a peek. I clicked on the email and regretted it immediately.
Jonathan, I still remember watching you in the light of the purple moon, the way ashes fluttered on your breath like flecks of forgotten things, and the way your hair rested on the pillow all rumpled and brown. I just want to run my hands through that hair again. Oh Jonathan, I can't stop thinking about you, the way you bite your lip when you're working at your cubicle, the way your skin is flushed on cold walks through the city, the way you masturbate in the dark when no one else is watching. How I want to touch you just once, just one more time. I want you to fill me, I want to feel you inside me, I want you to complete me. Jonathan, help me feel complete.
My face went red and I clicked delete so hard I thought I might break my mouse. I craned my neck to make sure no one had been reading over my shoulder, then shut down my computer and hastily got my things to leave. Suddenly I didn't feel safe anymore. This hadn't been spam. It was too specific, too close to home. I didn't think it was my ex either. Someone was watching me. It might have been watching me for a while. I could have asked one of my coworkers to walk with me to the train station, just in case, but only Bobber from accounting was still hanging around, and it probably would have been weird for a strapping young man like myself to ask for a bodyguard. I tried to tell myself I was just being paranoid. Besides, everyone was leaving work right about now, and Boston would be packed with people on my way home. I'd be safe in the crowd. I hate how it gets dark here around 4 p.m. in the winter, but at least I'm used to it. It's pretty much the same back in Washington. The sky was already turning gray when I left the office. I joined the swarm of pedestrians and headed down the street toward Haymarket. It's been fucking freezing lately, and that day was no exception. I hunkered in my scarf and jacket and worked my way forward as quickly as the crowd would allow. I probably wouldn't have noticed the weird guy in the black hoodie if I hadn't looked up at the exact right second. I was just passing Faneuil Hall and there was a street performer playing drums in a set of plastic buckets. I turned my head to watch him play, and that was when I locked eyes with the man standing by the Samuel Adams statue. His face was mostly hidden underneath his hood, but I could see his eyes clear as day, and they were a bright, vivid purple. He was staring right at me. I couldn't tell for sure, but I thought he might have been smiling. I pushed through the crowd, apologizing profusely. When I looked back, the guy in the hood was still staring at me. He lifted a gloved hand and offered me a slight wave. I turned back around, heart thumping, praying I could make it to the Green Line in one piece. Thankfully, I got there without incident. The train was packed, but I was grateful for the cover. I felt safer surrounded by so many people. We rumbled along on our way to Brighton. I couldn't help but sneak glances at my fellow passengers, hoping I wouldn't find the man in the hoodie staring back at me. I hated that I was getting so paranoid. But after that fucked up email, what else was I supposed to do? The hooded man, whoever he was, didn't show his face again that day. But I couldn't shake the sense that he was still watching me somehow. That night, I invited a guy over for a little fling. No one I knew, just some jock on Grindr looking for a fun time. Not exactly my proudest moment, but hey, any dude who likes dudes has been there at some point. It wasn't that I was feeling especially horny. I just didn't want to be alone. My roommate was out for the weekend, and the idea of spending 2 days by myself while some creep was out there stalking me wasn't the most appealing prospect. At this point, I'd take the comfort of a stranger over that kind of isolation. The jock showed up at my apartment around 9 o'clock. He had a tiny hoop earring, a neck tattoo, and platinum blonde hair with a little streak of green. A little more out there than my usual type, but at least he was fit. We never actually exchanged names. In my head, he was a Travis. We made out for a bit, did some other things I'm totally not going to talk about here, and spent the rest of the night cuddling and watching Netflix. He didn't talk much, which I was grateful for. Most of the time you can tell when a brief connection isn't going to grow into anything more. Travis was there, and he was gentle and fun and just the kind of distraction I needed. That was good enough for me. I invited him to stay the night, partly because I wasn't going to kick the guy out into sub-zero weather, but mostly because I wanted someone to hold while I was sleeping. Even in Dreamland, I didn't want to be alone. He preferred to be the big spoon, so I nestled up against him, holding his hand as I fell asleep. I don't remember what I dreamed about that night, if I dreamed at all. All I know is I woke up in the early hours of the morning and I wasn't holding Travis's hand anymore. Traces of gray sunlight lit up the far side of my bedroom, and there was a thick, heavy feeling in the air, like a blanket of heat without the warmth. I took a sniff and was instantly nauseated by the nastiest stench that had ever crossed my nostrils, something like raw meat mixed with sewage. I turned to look at Travis, but what I saw on the other side of the bed brought a scream to my throat, along with a good amount of bile. Travis had been mauled. His face was a pulpy mess, his chest cavity ripped open like a bomb had gone off inside his guts. Blood was splattered everywhere, all across the walls and bed sheets and the crappy t-shirt I'd worn to bed. There was this weird black gunk sprayed over everything too, but I couldn't tell what the substance was supposed to be. I scrambled out of bed and vomited into the corner, my whole body shaking. I had no idea who else had been in my apartment last night, or why they'd murdered Travis but left me alone. All I knew was that I had to call the police. I grabbed my jeans off the floor and fumbled through the pockets for my cell phone. But when I dialed 911 and held the phone up to my ear, the only thing I heard was a deep, heavy breathing. "Who the fuck is this?" I shouted. The person on the other end of the line spoke. Or at least I assumed it was a person. Their voice was garbled and a bit robotic, like they were speaking through a vocoder or something. It made my head throb with pain.
Oh Jonathan, it pained me to see you with another. How terrible that made me feel, how absolutely spurned and jaded. I couldn't stand to see him holding you like that, so I did what I had to do. I had to show you that he could never love you the way I love you. Oh Jonathan, how I want you to be with me, to fill me up, to complete me.
Leave me alone! I screamed. Tears were running down my face now, and I was at the point of incoherence. Leave me the fuck alone!
I will never stop, Jonathan. I will follow you to the ends of the earth until at last we can be together. We can be one soul, one being, one beating heart.
I hung up the phone and threw it into the corner. Then I curled up on the floor and clutched my knees to my chest, trying and failing not to cry. I couldn't look at the mangled mess in my bed that used to be Travis. This was my fault. I dragged someone totally innocent into my fucked up nightmare, and now he was dead because of me. He probably had plans for the weekend, or a term paper to write for college, or a big lacrosse game coming up or something. I never asked. Now I'd never know. Trying to call someone was obviously a bust, and I couldn't stick around here for long. The stench from Travis's corpse was threatening to make me vomit again. Besides, sticking around here when a stalker had already murdered someone in my bed was borderline suicidal. I hastily pulled off my blood-stained t-shirt and threw on some clean clothes. Then I grabbed my backpack and shoved in a handful of necessities. It was early, but I could probably catch a Greyhound at the South Station if I booked it. Boston didn't feel like the safest place for me to be right now. I didn't want to leave the body for my roommate to find when he got back, but there was no chance in hell I was going to try and move it. If I could find a working phone somewhere along the way, I tried reaching the police again. That was the extent of my advanced planning, though. I was too focused on the now, on getting the fuck out of here while I still had my legs attached, to worry about what came next. When I was satisfied that I packed everything I needed, I swung the backpack over my shoulder and booked it downstairs. Then I headed out into the frigid winter morning. The sun was just barely coming up over the tops of the apartments across the street, and everything was quiet. I could only hear the clomping of my footsteps and the rumbling of distant traffic. I kept craning my neck to look behind me. There was no one else walking the sidewalks at this hour, but my neck was prickling, and I wasn't sure if someone was actually watching me, or if I was being paranoid. I shifted my backpack and quickened my pace. The Boston College stop was only a few blocks away, and I figured I could get there before the sun came up completely. Then I heard it, the light patter of shoes on pavement. I turned around, nervous breaths billowing from my mouth in the cold, and saw a man in a black hoodie strolling along the sidewalk. At first I let myself believe it was just someone out for a brisk morning walk. Then the stroll turned into a stride, covering several feet with each gangly step, and I felt my heart leap in my chest. I turned around and began to run. The stranger's footsteps had changed from light patters to earth-shaking thuds, like his shoes were slamming into the pavement. I clutched at the straps of my backpack and ran as fast as I could, even when I felt cramps developing in my side, even when I clipped the edge of my jacket on a loose tangle of fence. There was no one on the street to cry out to, no cops waiting on the corner to save me. If the train wasn't waiting for me when I arrived, then I was fucked, plain and simple. I dared one more look behind me and nearly stumbled flat on my face. The man in the hoodie, he was changing. His body was unfolding like an envelope, his face turning waxy like a dummy, his chest bursting open to reveal a grisly red and black interior. The black was the same goop I'd seen in my apartment. The red was a pulsing cluster of human hearts. There must have been 20 or more stuffed into his chest cavity. They were still beating, still pumping out streams of thick red blood, and they throbbed as one when they saw me looking back.
We can be together, we can be one soul, one being, one beating heart.
I shuddered, swallowed some bile, and forced myself to go a little faster. I could see the Green Line train approaching the station just up ahead. The sight sent such a surge of relief through me that I think I started laughing and sobbing at the same time. I leaped off the sidewalk, narrowly missing a passing car, and hurried onto the platform. The trolley doors were just hissing open as I ran up. I hurtled inside, breathing heavily, and swiped my Charlie card across the scanner. The doors began to close, too slow, far, far too slow. I ignored the stares of the other passengers as I clambered to the back of the carriage and took a seat. I couldn't keep myself from glancing nervously out the window. The train lurched forward, rumbling its way along the track, leaving behind a solitary figure on the platform. He looked like a person again, just an ordinary man in a black hoodie, but I'd seen the thing inside of him. Whatever was standing out there, it wasn't human. It never had been. It stared at me with those weirdly purple eyes as the train picked up speed and left it standing in the cold. I turned away from the window and tried to breathe normally again. This all happened this morning. I'm writing this from the back of a Greyhound bus, huddled up in my winter jacket and keeping a watchful eye on the other passengers. I haven't seen the figure in the black hoodie since I left Boston. I haven't gotten any more threatening emails or taken any menacing calls on my phone. I'm not naive enough to believe this is over, though.
I will never stop, Jonathan. I will follow you to the ends of the earth until at last we can be together.
Not gonna lie, I still get chills thinking about those words. But I have to try and escape. Maybe I'm an idiot for thinking I can outrun this thing. Maybe it's always gonna be at my back until it decides to show itself again. Maybe one day I'll wake up to find that hideous cavity of beating hearts opening up to consume me. Life's a ticking clock now. I don't know how long I've got left, but you damn well better believe I'm gonna outlast this thing as long as I can. I can't tell you where I'm going, in case he happens to be listening. Just know that I'm going somewhere safe. And maybe, if I'm lucky, somewhere I won't be alone. Hey everyone, thanks for listening to today's video. If you like what you heard, feel free to leave a comment below, and please subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. If you'd like to support the channel even further, I highly encourage picking up a copy of the Neverglades books, which are all available on Amazon right now. Or, please consider donating to my Patreon account at the link provided. Hope you're having a wonderful day, and as always, don't forget to stay weird.